Greetings everybody, my name is Hyacinth Myers and I am a parent carer in the London Borough of Hackney. So today I've actually been asked to do this video for Hackney Carers Centre and just to talk about my experiences as a BAME carer. Actually, while this is now National Carers Week and the theme is about making carers visible, it's actually a very interesting week. It's also been a very difficult last few weeks, I think, for everybody worldwide, because there is now a lot of unrest, but also because the last few months have been in lockdown due to the coronavirus and the globe having to shut down. The economy is shut down, people's businesses are shut down, and life as we know it has shut down. Today I'm hoping my talk is going to be a bit more inspirational, actually, just talking about some of the issues BAME carers face, but also some of the positives for you to do to basically build up your resilience, and also some of the facts. So I think actually before we start, it's actually really good to probably just start with a 1 minute silence. Actually, not just for George Floyd, the man who was actually brutally killed by police, but also for all the hundreds of other people that have been killed at the hands of actually systems that I'm hoping will be broken down, systems of racism, actually. So I'm just going to do a 1 minute silence, if you don't mind. Thank you. Yeah, so deep breath. I'm now pre-recording this because I went onto Instagram Live and Facebook Live this morning together at the same time, and for some reason the signal kept on dropping in and out. So I had lovely people there live who were unable to hear or really see, because at times they said it was freezing, what I was talking about. So this is now been pre-recorded, actually, just so that you don't actually lose out. Thank you so much actually for being here. I'm going to keep taking drinks of water because I've got quite a sore, dry throat. So my name is Hyacinth Myers, and as I said before, I am a parent carer to a child who has special educational needs and disabilities. My child is 14 years old. He was born extremely premature at the age of 23 weeks, and he was a twin. Unfortunately, we lost his twin brother, Shaka, when he was 3 weeks old. But my youngest son has fought really difficult battles. He was in hospital for the first 6.5 months. He had heart surgery as well as a hernia operation. He has had pneumonia. He has had septicemia. He has been through the mill, actually, and the doctors are amazed because he was also ventilated for quite a long time and came home on oxygen. So he was on oxygen for the first near enough 2 years of his life. So we've had a run. I've had a run with him. I'm also a single parent, and I went through the birth and the death and raising now my sons, because I also have an older son as well, alone. So yeah, I think what I'm going to talk about really now is just about Black, Asian, minority, ethnic parents. And I think I'm going to talk about some of the interesting statistics I found on Carers UK on a report that was called 500,000 Voices that was done back on in 2011. And I thought it was quite interesting because then, and we're thinking 9 years ago, BAME carers made up 500,000 carers in the UK alone and saved the UK economy, the state, £7.9 billion a year. The research also found that even though there are so many carers from these backgrounds, the services really, there are hardly any services still. And BAME carers do more caring compared to white British carers. For me, I can honestly say I never saw myself as a parent carer because my son obviously is my child. And it's only really when he got to about 6 or 7 years old and I realised actually I've been doing far more looking after him and caring than I would have done for a child who was born full term with no difficulties. I was unable to work because we had 4 to 5 hospital appointments a week in various hospitals. Obviously he was on home oxygen. I was weaning him off myself and working with a respiratory nurse, although that wasn't very often. And I think also even thinking about that experience, even working with the respiratory nurse, she seemed to think that I was more than capable of weaning him off the oxygen by myself. So even the lack of support was even there at the most detrimental time. Black, Asian and minority ethnic carers, as in that report, are at more risk of ill health, loss of employment and social exclusion. And I think that's actually completely true because I was unable to work. I knew that no job was going to want me anyway, having to keep taking most of the week off. It was impossible. My own health started to suffer when he was, I think when he got to about 2.5 years old, because when he came home, he was on 16 medications a day and I could not have more than 2 hour sleeps. So his medication, some of his medication was falling within a 2 hour gap. So I could not sleep all the way through the night for the first 2.5 years. I think the sleep through the night that I actually got was when he was in hospital itself. And then obviously then I started my round the clock care for him. Actually, something else really to think about now during this time with COVID-19 coronavirus actually is that there are many carers who are out there supporting other people, whether it's family members, whether it's actually care work, whether it's working for the NHS or frontline workers. And many of these people are from Black and Asian minority ethnic groups. I personally am going to be focusing more on the Black group because even though I've got some great statistics about some of the other groups, as a mixed race woman and as a Black woman, I can only really speak for the services that I've seen for myself, and where it's Asian minority ethnic, I can talk for other parents and other carers that I know personally. So with the whole coronavirus, we're seeing really high numbers, and we know that there's going to be some kind of report, some kind of investigation into that. And I personally think really because of our exposure to working with people who are more likely to be unwell and caring for people in general, and especially the rate of caring we do, I think that is one of the main reasons why coronavirus is affecting us much more. I myself have not had it, but I have had 5 friends who have had it, which is quite a high number because I knew nobody actually until about week 3 of the whole lockdown in the UK. 21% of BAME carers provide 50 or more hours a week care, And for myself, my care is non-stop. The only time I am not caring is if I go away, or if my mum or my son's other grandmother has him for a night or a weekend. Obviously with this whole lockdown, I've been with my son 24 hours a day, like I think most people have been, with no break, no respite. Adding on top of that, actually being doing homeschooling, and homeschooling a child with special educational needs is actually a task in itself, and that's been taking up between 15 to 20 hours a week actually of my time. In a positive way, actually, I've got to know exactly where my son's gaps are, because I knew he had gaps in his attainment due to his special needs. But the fact that he's got no resources at home, nobody on the phone to support him with actually any of his work, and it feels like we've been almost abandoned in a way. It's actually been quite challenging. And I'm speaking to parents who are not just parent carers, but other parents in general across the UK, including parents even in Wiltshire, who are saying that they feel like the homeschooling is so difficult. And I know a lot of parents have had to actually abandon homeschooling. For my son, I know he's already behind, and personally I don't want him to fall no further behind, as he's the first year GCSEs. So I'm focusing on bringing his levels of attainment up. There are a few teachers who are marking his work regularly, and he seems to have increased his levels, which actually shows that I'm actually doing a good job, and probably this one-to-one is what he needed at the time. The figures also state, sorry about that, that 10% of BAME carers provide 24-hour care. And I personally would, the research looks great, but I personally would question as to how many carers. I mean, because the carers they found was 500,000. I believe that there's actually much more than that. There are many more people that have caring roles, that care for family members, also neighbours and relatives who are not in contact with any services, who do not see themselves as carers, and who are not utilising any form of carers allowance or anything like that. I'm also an unpaid carer because I don't claim that. I have a small business, and I work with women to overcome adversity. So for me, I am self-employed, and that is my main source of income. Also, sorry, you're going to keep seeing me looking down, but I've got my lovely little post-it notes, actually. 250,000 BAME carers work as well as care, and I'm just thinking, wow, that's a lot of pressure. And probably that is also why 60,000 at that time, 60,000, I think it was 120 BAME carers had poor health. And I'm thinking, working full-time or part-time is challenging enough. Caring is challenging enough, whether it's full-time or part-time. Put the combination together, you're constantly busy, you constantly cannot even make doctor's appointments for yourself. It's no surprising why high blood pressure and diabetes are really high amongst the Black communities, Black and Asian communities. And I can also, and they also found that in Hackney and Wandsworth, they had the highest percentage of poor health. That's not surprising to me at all. As a carer myself, I've also had health challenges I've had to work through, especially in the last probably 5 years. And I think a lot of those challenges came down to the fact that I was so engrossed in caring for my son, because I had to. At one point, it was a stage of life and death. My son, I had to resuscitate my son a number of times a week, actually, when he was at his poorest, when he was really unwell and he was at home. So the caring itself actually takes a toll. Into the Indian community, actually at the time they found 7% of the Indian community had the poor health, the Caribbean community closely behind in 6%, and then the white other, which I'm assuming was the other minority ethnic groups, were just 6% as well. So my personal experience is that I think factors also such as language, access to health, which we know there's already inequalities in health. This is something I studied at university, actually, at policy level and also at NHS management level, that there are inequalities in health, education, housing, and also policing. And that was my minor. I studied comparative policing international. And right at this time, I think, where we have this uprising and people now talking about racism, race is back on the agenda, and people are really starting to see, I think the incident with George Floyd, which was just absolutely disgusting, was it's not something that's not happened before. We have hundreds and thousands of people that have been killed at the hands of not just the police, but also other racist incidences. Even if we think about the young man, Stephen Lawrence, who was a schoolboy. So I think at this time, during lockdown, people have so much more time now to reflect on not only just what they want for their life, but also how society is and how really we're going to move forward. And for me, I'm just really about everybody. I just think everybody needs to move forward as one. And that means eradicating inequalities in all forms and in all structures. And I think right now, with a lot of the uprising that's happening, we have to remember that people have had systematic abuse and racism going on for hundreds of years. We have systems that are in place not really to benefit everybody equally. And I think the message is Black people are in general are not asking for special treatment. They're asking for the same treatment. So even as a parent carer myself, even in the schooling, I've got an older son, so we experienced specific incidences actually while he was at school. But my younger son has special needs. The amount of work, the time and energy I've had to put into making sure we can access those, putting in place an EHCP plan, which is similar for a statement, which would, it's a legal document stating the resources and what you would need to enable the child to have the same equal access. All of those things have been such a drain on my energy, actually, and on us as a family, because I've had to fight for those things. I think a lot of it is usually left, and people think that especially Black women, are so strong they can do anything, which is actually true to a degree. But like all women, we actually need support at some times. And sometimes when we ask for support, we have waited until the very last moment to ask for that support from outside agencies. And I think it's things like that, structures like that, are now starting to be broken down. I think also because of things like access to health, sometimes we are not really seen as suffering with stress. And I think that's also another reason why we have high blood pressure and diabetes top of our agenda, along with now strokes. I'm meeting women who are Black women, some of them are carers as well, who are having strokes in their early 40s. I mean, there's something actually really quite wrong if we are stressed to that level that we are suffering from strokes in their 40s, and also women dying in their 40s. So I've been to a number of funerals. We've touched on schools. We know with schools and children, Black children, especially Black boys, have been doing much worse than a lot of the other students. And we know a lot of that is not just down to capability, it's down to the infrastructures and the way systems are run. We also know that carers especially, but also carers are in the worst housing. Studies have found that. And also that in regards to things like policing, which is obviously not part of caring, but policing targets young black people more, males especially. So even if we're thinking about, there's some women that I know that have children that have autism, young black males who have autism. Now they are not going to understand some of the little clues, some of facial expressions, how to interact. So if you have officers that are stopping some of these young people with special needs. I mean, there was a report I was reading the other day. You can actually see those young people are ending up being taken to the station and sometimes imprisoned because they actually don't understand the system. Some of them do not even have full capacity to actually speak for themselves and should have somebody else with them. Yeah, and there was just a range of things actually like that. So those are some of the things to talk about. In regard to making carers visible, I think that is a fantastic theme actually for this year, because I think carers, unpaid carers especially, have been invisible regardless of colour. But it's almost an assumption that a black or a Asian minority ethnic carer is not really a carer, even though they're taking up a lot of their time. Some of them are unable to work because of their caring, but they are still not seen as a carer. So I think this is actually a brilliant theme for this year. I think really for carers, I've actually thought it's good for carers to just find local support. Now, I came across, I think, Hackney Carers Centre. I think my son was maybe about 6 or 7 when I came across them, actually, and they have been fantastic for me. I use the London Buddhist Centre, who have a carers group, and they run free meditations, etc. for carers. HIP, Hackney's Independent Parents Forum, I was a service user there. They are for parents of children with special educational needs and disabilities. I was also a steering group member there, so they do some fantastic events, but also I think more so it's being in a community with other parent carers especially. There are so much other things to think about. It's worth telling your GP if you are a carer as well. They'll have that on a system, and depending on your GP and practice, they may have you as a priority patient, but also other services will be available to you. In regard to things like your utility provider, it's worth also letting them know that you are a carer and that you can be on their priority service as well for any breakdowns or any other things that are specific to any additional needs you might need as a parent carer. And I think actually doing things like this, actually being on lives, being on pre-recorded videos and just sharing your story as a parent carer. My background is also community work. So for over 30 years, I've worked mostly in Hackney, but I've also worked further afield. So I've worked for Bliss, the premature baby charity. Myself and my son, we've done quite a lot of campaigning work and press work with them. We are a case study with them. So we've done that around raising awareness of premature births and also babies, and fighting for neonatal care as well. Also, I've worked with other organisations actually where it's just been really beneficial for me, because what it's done is allowed me to know about some of the systems and the services in place, and also just be able to share that information with other carers. So if I come across somebody who's a brand new carer or who is a parent with a child with special educational needs and doesn't know the field at all, I just refer them to a lot of either organisations, websites and information. And I think really as carers, we need to share those stories, our expertise, and also just get those voices heard. I look for a lot of online events. So even though most of my life is not immersed in the whole caring field at the moment, because I'm working with women, so I'm actually doing that work. I'm also, at times you can find me in that space, in the whole special educational needs and disability space, but also in the caring space, because that gives me time away from being a worker myself to actually being a service user and actually getting support myself. And for me, it's really a difficult time, but I'm actually glad that race is now on the agenda, and we are now thinking about looking at services, and people are starting to question company politics, setup, how people operate. I think this is really a really blessed time, even though an extremely difficult time and concerning time for people who are really worried and who are constantly watching the news. I think right now is the time for change. And actually, I think this is also the time for people to realise about how resilient they are. Most of us had not much warning or no warning at all about lockdown being impending and about the whole coronavirus. And I know that has its own worries. We are now having people who are suffering bereavements in isolation. We are now having people who are dying on their own, and family members who can't even attend funerals of loved ones. But I think really now is the time to just start building your resilience and finding ways of building that resilience. So for me, I always suggest to women, and I use it myself, to start journaling, because when we are actually faced with very difficult emotions and times, it is so easy to just regurgitate it around and around in your head. Writing it down gets it out and stops it the spinning over and over, and then you can actually use your head to think about and create space to do something else. Doing creative things and fun things actually are brilliant. It's a brilliant time now in a way, because this is a great pause. Some people can call it a great awakening. Whatever you think this time is, use it wisely. I just think don't watch news as much, especially if you know that you've got anxiety, because it's making a lot of people anxious. My son also has anxiety, so the news is actually banned in the house, and it has been since I think week 2 of the lockdown. I really used to have news banned, but he started becoming obsessed with watching it, and it was just increasing his anxiety, and also starting to develop some kind of social phobia when we was out. So think about fun things, reading, exercises, even if it's just stretching. I mean, because some of us are really not got the inclination to do a full out workout in our home on our own. Use the support of family, friends and professionals. We are so blessed to have smartphones, to have the internet, to be able to record this recorded video for you, actually to have things like WhatsApp where you can do it for free, FaceTime, all social media platforms. So we have got access to the world, actually, and we've now got access to more people than we ever had before. So actually using that for good and for some support. I personally have a gratitude jar, which I keep trying to get my little gratitude jar, and it has here's my gratitude jar. So I write in there little things that I'm grateful for, things that people have done. I put it in there, and then days when I'm feeling quite tired or a little bit down, I'll get it out and then I'll actually read it. And actually this is from 2015, and this is actually, I'm grateful for the Sacred Sister Circle and having continued access to it. And I remember that time because that was a time when I really needed a lot of support and stuff outside of me being in my work mode, even though it's for myself. And I found a wonderful sister circle being run by a woman that I know who has an organisation that was called Hands Inc. And they were running workshops for women, and it was really about just coming into your womanhood, actually. They also do workshops for women around menopause as well. So that was a great space for me to be in. And that was actually a blessing, because I was really looking for supportive outside space where I don't have to be Hyacinth, the women's empowerment coach. I don't have to be mum. I don't have to be the aunt or the family support worker. I don't have to be the community godmother. I can just be me, the carer, and just have time with myself to actually spend with myself and also express myself. And also something else that I try to use daily is meditation, and I'm trying to do this with my son. He's still quite reluctant to do it, but actually just listening to on YouTube, they've got ones that are even as short as 5 minutes, 5-minute guided meditations and breathing exercises, because it really can change your state, especially if you're feeling really stressed. In the toilet, lock the door, 5-minute meditation. They're all things that can really help you, actually. So yeah, I hope you found this useful. I'm actually just going to end and just ask you to close your eyes if you want to. If not, just listen to this. It's from a really lovely book about resilience, and it's actually a woman called Anna Barnes. And it's actually a short piece that's called "This Too Shall Pass." So I'll read it to you. When you're going through a tough time, it can feel as if things will never change. Perhaps you move to a new place, struggle to make friends, and think you will always be alone. Or your relationship ends, and you feel as if the pain and heartache will never stop. Whatever the situation, remind yourself that this too shall pass. What is stressful now will be just a memory within a few weeks, months, or years. Nothing lasts forever. Everything changes with time, especially the way you see things. And I think that's just a really wonderful place to end, because the lockdown has not lasted forever, even though it felt like that at the beginning. Structures are starting to change now in society. So this is an absolutely blessed time, as well as difficult, because we can't see what the outcome is. I think the more people that raise their vibration and actually think about it will create positive is the more positive that actually will happen. And all I'd like to say really is thank you to Hackney Carers Centre. Thank you to HIP. Thank you to the London Buddhist Centre. Thank you to Hands Inc. Thank you to all the other parents and carers and the people I know. Thank you to all the organisations who are doing all of the much needed research. I think it's time for some new research now, because that research was so insightful, but that was 2011. Thank you also to everybody and all the people we are actually caring for teaching us something new about ourselves daily. And also thank you to the universe actually for having our back, for always being there. If there's anything else you want to find out, if there's any other questions you've got, please feel free to put them in the posts that are going to be on the YouTube, my YouTube channel, Hyacinth J Myers Official. Also on Hackney Carers Facebook page and their Instagram page as well. I think they've got a YouTube page, so hopefully this will make it onto their YouTube page as well. I am more than willing to get back to you. And also just to remember a quote from my own book actually, which is about the 7 steps for overcoming adversity and transforming your life. And that is that we are not, let me think, because my energy is still so high. We are not victims of our circumstances. We are soul conscious creators of our future. So on that note, I'd love to wish you a wonderful day. Stay blessed. Take care. Make sure you keep following Hackney Carers Centre and all the other centres that are close by to you. Make sure you reach out for help and make sure that you stay well. Take care. Bye.